committed or aided the terrorist attacks that occurred on September 11th, 2001, or harbored such organizations or persons in order to prevent any future acts of international terrorism against the United States by such nations, organizations, or persons. At least one member of Congress was shocked by the breadth of the assertions that were made by Michael Sheehan, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations, in support of the grounding document for the unending, open-ended global war we found ourselves in.
I've only been here 5 months, but this is the most astounding and most astoundingly disturbing hearing that I've been to since I've been here. You guys have essentially rewritten the Constitution here today. I don't disagree that we need to fight terrorism, but we need to do it in a constitutionally sound way.
Joining me now is Democratic Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who represents California's 13th District, who is the only member of either house to vote against the original authorization of the use of military force. Congresswoman, it's good to have you here. My first question for you is, what did you make of this hearing yesterday?
Chris, first, thank you very much for reading the resolution, because I hope the public will begin to listen to what took place, and that was a blank check that allowed for perpetual war until we actually repeal it. I'm very delighted that the hearings took place, because the debate that is occurring now should have occurred 3 days after the terrible events of 9/11. That debate did not occur. So now we're beginning to see the senators at least hold hearings. We're beginning to hold forums. We're beginning to see the Washington Post, New York Times begin to editorialize on this. And so finally, after 13 years, we're finally coming to grips with the fact that this blank check was a blank check, which allowed now for the state of war to be the new norm. Unfortunately, peace is the exception.
The Pentagon leaders that were testifying yesterday, they asserted a very broad scope for the war and the authority to grants. Was that surprising to you, or is that pretty much what you've expected and understood from the administration?
Well, the broad scope of the resolution is very broad. I mean,
right, the language of the actual thing at issue.
It's very broad. That's why I couldn't vote for it.
Right.
And we wrote to the president, 8 or 9 of us, and asked the president to really lay out the legal justification for the use of drones. This resolution has been used for domestic surveillance. It's been used dozens of times abroad. It's been used to take troops into combat areas. It's just a blank check that needs to be repealed. So finally, we're going to hear the president talk about the legal justification for much of what is taking place.
I want to play this exchange from the hearing between Senator Lindsey Graham and Michael Sheehan again, and this is on the subject of how long. I mean, this has always been the question since days after the attack of 9/11, since the passage of the AUMF, through the duration of the Bush administration and into the Obama administration. How long? How long does this last? When can we say that it's over? Take a listen.
Do you agree with me the war against radical Islam or terror, whatever description you like to provide, will go on after the second term of President Obama?
Senator, in my judgment, this is going to go on for quite a while, and yes, beyond the second term of the president.
And beyond this term of Congress?
Yes, sir. I think it's at least 10 to 20 years.
So, from your point of view, you have all the authorization and legal authorities necessary to conduct a drone strike against terrorist organizations in Yemen without changing the AUMF?
Yes, sir, I do believe that.
Congresswoman, do you agree? Do you think this war is going to take 20 years? Was that a surprising thing to hear from the administration?
Well, it's not surprising, but it's outrageous. First of all, I have legislation, H.R. 198, to repeal this authorization to use force. Come on, Chris, we cannot allow, first of all, our systems of checks and balances to be eroded. Only Congress can declare a war. If we're going to be in this state of perpetual war forever, then my goodness, why can't Congress debate this and make a decision as to whether or not we're going to declare a war? So, no, I don't agree with what is taking place, and I think that we need to actually, hopefully, get the public to really understand that this overwhelmingly unending war is really taking away our precious resources from our domestic agenda and nation building right here at home.
The president is reported to be working on a speech. I just read you the report by Daniel Clayman, in which there's a plan now, apparently, for the president to come out and actually address all this head on. They have not wanted to talk about it very much in a public way. John Brennan's given a few speeches. The chief legal advisor at the State Department, Harold Koh, gave a somewhat noticeable speech. But the president himself hasn't had a big speech on these issues. What are you hoping to hear when he does come out and talk about this?
First, I have to applaud the president for doing this. This is exactly what we asked him to do a couple of months ago. This blank check was not a blank check that I voted against just as it relates to President Bush, but President Obama, any future presidents will have this broad authority. So I hope the president will lay out the legal justification and why the White House believes and the Pentagon believes that they can continue to allow our country in this state of perpetual war, this unending war, without coming to Congress. Once again, we cannot relent as members of Congress. The president is the commander-in-chief. He has to secure our country and make our country safe. But we as members of Congress, as it relates to our system of democracy, we have a duty and responsibility to debate and to ensure that the checks and balances are prevail, and that is exactly what needs to happen. So hopefully the president will lay it out, and members of Congress will then understand that we have to do our job.
Congresswoman Barbara Lee, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, liberals, you watching? I need to talk to you. There's something that we are not all seeing eye to eye on, and I want to make my case. So let's talk next.